Go ahead in just 1 minute. Welcome everyone. Today we will be talking about the different engineering departments here at MIT LGO. But before we get started, I just want to do some quick introductions. So I'm Emma Shortall. I'm the admissions coordinator for the Leaders for Global Operations program. Then we also have Dominic. Dominic, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Dominic Lamano. I'm the Director of Admissions and Marketing for LGO and here to help. Very excited to see and hear from all of you today.
Ed, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Ted Equi, the Director of Academics, Internship, and Research, working with the various engineering departments over the years. I've been with LGO for 17 years and working at partner companies before coming back to MIT. Look forward to hearing your questions.
And then we have our amazing current students. Maureen, would you introduce yourself first?
Hi everyone, my name is Maureen. I'm LGO 26, which means I will be graduating 26, and right now it's my first year. My major is electrical engineering and computer science, so EECS course 6.
Ahad, will you go ahead?
Hello everyone, Ahad here. I am also in Marine's cohort, so LGO 26. I am civil and environmental engineering major. And aside from that, I just had my firstborn baby. The last 2.5 weeks have been very busy. So if anyone wants to speak as to how that experience goes, I can also add a bit to that.
And then Joe, would you go ahead?
Yes, so my name is Josephine Dyson. I am also an LGO 26, and I am in the electrical engineering and computer science department.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys. So we're going to jump right in. If you have any questions for the panelists, for us throughout the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A function, but we will also have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation. So whenever your heart strikes, feel free to ask the question. All right. So just a general overview about the LGO program. So the LGO program is a 2-year dual degree program here at MIT. Sorry, excuse me. So you're a full student of the MIT Sloan MBA program, the engineering department you're doing your master's in, and the LGO program. So we have our own LGO staff for student services, career network, financing, and action learning. So it is primarily on campus. So you do spend 4 semesters on campus as well as 6 months at one of our partner companies while you're doing an internship. And then you also conduct thesis research during your internship. So you do have 2 faculty advisors assigned, one from the School of Engineering and one from the Sloan School of Management, in addition to the program advisors on the LGO program team. And just a little information, the class size average is about 50. This year it was 45, but it does range around 50 each year. And then this is just a big snapshot of LGO. So you can tell we're 3 in 1 for LGO. So we have the School of Engineering, MIT Sloan, as well as the LGO industry partners, and that helps create LGO. So the different engineering departments that you can be a part of is Aeroastro, Chemical Engineering, Civil and Environmental Engineering, Electrical and Computer Science, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, excuse me, Mechanical Engineering, Nuclear, NSC, Nuclear Science and Engineering, I'm pretty sure. Thank you. I don't know why I was blanking on that one. And then Operations Research Center. So we'll jump right into each of the engineering departments, what they look for. Yeah, go right ahead. So first, we're going to start with aeronautics and astronautics. So for pre-LGO experience, typically students have come in with aviation, automotive, software, consulting, IT services, and operations as their background. And post-LGO, some have gone into aerospace, renewable energy, defense, consulting, and healthcare. Again, these are just generalized, and these are like the most of students, but students have gone other places besides these as well. So just stating that for every engineering department. And then for Aero Astro, for the background they look for is a bachelor's degree in STEM, defined research areas in line with the Aero Astro's research areas. Previous project experience in an Aero Astro related field is a plus, not required, but definitely a plus. And it is also strongly encouraged to have a former professor or academic source for the technical recommendation. And then for the curriculum, those are the different research areas of interest for Aero Astro, and then class requirements include graduate courses, of course, in Aero Astro, at least 21 units, and then engineering graduate courses as approved by AA Advisor for your electives. And then the advisor for Aero Astro is assigned during admission. And then for internships, there are closed market internships. So I'll have my friend Ted over here explain closed market and open market internships, as you'll see those within each of the engineering departments.
So the internships are sourced from all of our partners. So students do an internship at one of our partner companies. And the term closed market just means that the content is designed for a particular engineering department, as we don't necessarily have a wide range that have the appropriate content for aero, astro, chemistry, and nuclear science and engineering. And being closed just means that those students in that department are eligible to interview for the project. The students in this department can also interview with other projects that are available to other students if the content is appropriate. So we do some additional outreach to make sure that we have all the engineering departments covered for internship research topics.
Thank you, Ted. And also just another note on Aero Astro, it is one of our smaller departments, so it usually is only 2 to 5 students per class. And then going into chemical engineering, also known as course 10. At MIT, all the courses and like each department has numbers associated with it. So if you hear people talk about course 10, course 2, that's what they mean. So for pre-LGO experience, students have come in with experience in medical devices, energy, pharma, biotech, chemicals, and plastics. For careers post-LGO, it's been pharma, biotech, energy, consulting, healthcare. And then for the background that they're looking for when you apply, it's a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering or similar major. So things like biochemistry, bioengineering, biomedical engineering, etc. Strong computational background and interest in biotech, and previous work experience in chemical engineering projects or the biotech industry is a plus. And then for the curriculum, there is a biomedical and biotechnology focus, and these are the different class requirements for Chem E, and they also are closed market internships. Also, this is another one of our smaller departments, usually just a few students per class. Just wanted to make sure. All right. Go into civil and environmental engineering, also known as course 1. For pre-LGO experience, students have come in with oil and gas, automotive, consulting, energy, and environmental impact. For careers post-LGO, we have supply chain, e-commerce, data analytics, and systems optimization. And for the background, civil and environmental engineering looks for a prior degree in STEM field or significant STEM coursework, and a stated research interest in line with the CE's research areas. So it does show the different research areas right here, and then has the different class requirements and electives. An advisor is also assigned during admission for CEE, and they are open market internships. And then It is one of our growing departments, so it does have a good amount of students in it each year. And if you're interested in supply chain, it's also a good department for that. Going into electrical engineering and computer science, also known as Course 6. For pre-LGO experience, students have come in with experience in technology, finance, software, consulting, electronics, and energy. For careers post-LGO, there's been product management, energy, data, analytics, e-commerce, and healthcare jobs. For background for ECS, they typically look for a prior degree in the STEM field and a significant knowledge of electrical engineering and computer science or advanced math and/or physics. They look for a defined research interest in line with EECS's research areas and previous work experience in an industrial setting. So lined here are the different research areas for EECS, and then the different class requirements, including electives for EECS, and they are department with open market internships. For mechanical engineering, which is also known as Course 2, for pre-LGO experience, they typically look for oil and gas, automotive, defense, consulting, consumer goods. For careers post-LGO, students have gone to do operations, energy, manufacturing, product management in the biomedical field. For the background, they look for a prior degree in the STEM field, and MECI does have prerequisite classes that they look for when you apply. So classes such as solid mechanics or statics, thermodynamics, fluid mechanics and dynamics, and computation engineering mathematics. The popular research areas of interest are design, manufacturing, and product development, controls, instrumentation, and robotics, bioengineering, and energy science and engineering. And then the different electives that you can take with MECI, and they are also open market internships. And then we have nuclear science and engineering, course 22. For pre-LGO experience, it is typically coming from defense, consulting, or government. For careers post-LGO, a lot of students go into renewable energy. For the background, they look for a prior degree in STEM or significant STEM coursework, particularly a significant amount of physics coursework. A background in nuclear science is not needed to apply, though prior work experience is a plus. And then for the curriculum, there's the different specializations within the nuclear science department. And then looking at the class requirements, the core and elective. And then advisor is assigned during admissions as well, and there are closed market internships. They are our newest department in LGO, and there's also usually about 2 per class. It does range, but 2 per class is a typical average. And then we have Operations Research Center. So for pre-LGO experience, they look for consulting, students have come from consulting, technology, finance, e-commerce, and government. For careers post-LGO, students have gone into operations, data science, optimization, and transportation logistics. The background they look for when you apply to ORC is a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics, industrial engineering, computer science, or statistics, and you need to have extensive math and statistics coursework and programming experience. They also look for research interest in operations research applications and demonstrated ability to apply advanced analytical methods in industry. They also strongly recommend to have a former professor or academic source for the technical recommendation. They are also part of the open market internships, and we always encourage, if you're interested in supply chain, optimization, logistics, and data analytics, consider the civil and environmental engineering department, as the ORC department only usually has 1 to 2 students per class. And then we'll go into the different applications.
Emma, just the other departments where there is overlap with ORC is EECS. So if there's a lot of analytics and optimization, but the supply chain, if that's this particular interest, that's more appropriate for CE, as you mentioned, just as people are evaluating. There is overlap from the various departments. Robotics, for instance, is mechanical, aero, astro, A&D, CS. So it's a
Thank you, Ted.
diverse set of engineering departments.
Perfect. And then we'll jump into the application component.
Sorry, Emma, one more thing. I don't mean to interrupt.
go ahead.
Just, before we get off the engineering, one question I wanted to just clear up that came up. Do you need to apply to one specific discipline, or can you apply to two? And the answer is only one. So you can only apply to one during your application. So if you have questions about which one you should apply to, by all means, you can email us at lgo@mit.edu, and we can talk about which one best fits your path that you want to go through. But for the application in and of itself, it's only one. Sorry. Thanks, Emma. You're on mute, Emma.
Dominic, you had a question. There was a question about open and closed market that someone asked, and you said you wanted to answer that live. Do you want to do that in Q&A? Or
it's up to you. I just I was waiting for it to flow naturally, but if you want to just grab it now, Ted, that's totally fine.
I had mentioned this previously when we were talking about Aeroastro, but to try and be clear, the departments that have closed market, we try and get projects that are specific for those departments so that they have the right engineering content, and only those students within those departments can interview for those handful of projects. The open market is open to all students, but each project is evaluated as to which department is applicable. So students in the closed market department can also interview open market projects if it's approved for their engineering department. A given project in the open market may be approved for ORC, CEE, EECS, but not mechanical. So you will have plenty of projects available to you. And I can, you'll be interviewing for 15 to 20 different projects. So the availability of projects should not be a concern.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, guys. All right, so now we'll jump into application components. So we'll go through each one and explain just a little bit. Resume is your typical resume. There is on the application format that you should follow. So make sure to read that to make sure you're using the correct format for this resume. And then a cover letter where essentially you're asking for a spot in the LGO program. There's one professional letter of recommendation and one technical letter of recommendation required, but we do strongly recommend a second technical letter of recommendation for your application. It's not required, but we definitely strongly recommend it. There's a statement of purpose where you kind of explain which engineering department you want to go into, which partner companies you'd maybe like to intern for, and kind of going more into the engineering side of things. There's an organizational chart as a part of the application. So things I always like to mention with the organizational chart, if you work in a company that is very you cannot release the names of everything, that is fine. We just want to see where you are within the company. And you also circle if there's a letter of a recommendation in your organizational chart, excuse me. There's also a 60-second video introduction. So you essentially introduce yourself to your future classmates. None of your future classmates will ever see this video. And it is just for the admissions committee. I always like to put that out there. There's also a second video question this year. So essentially you'll have 10 seconds to review a question, and then the camera will turn on and you have to answer it. There's no preparation needed for this video. It is a random question. Essentially, one could be like, how have you influenced someone in your company? So it's a very simple question. It's more just seeing how you can talk on your feet. And there's also GRE or GMAT required. Doesn't matter which one you want to do. And there's also a short answer about your background. So the short answer is, how has the world you come from shaped who you are today? For example, your family, culture, community, all help to shape aspects of your life experiences and perspective. And then please use this opportunity to share more about your background. And then the deadline for the LGO application is November 6th, and it is at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So please remember that. And then interviews are required, but they are by invitation only and are conducted by the admissions committee. Perfect. We'll jump into questions. If anyone has one right off the bat, feel free to jump in while I review them.
Dominic, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry, lots of questions. Love them all. I'm typing away feverishly, but one that I wanted to talk about live. Let me just find it really quick.
Dominic,
Yeah.
I might actually just jump in there. I saw there was one that you wanted to answer for EECS specifically, or maybe it was you, Emma. Because Josephine and I have to leave a little bit early before class, it would be great if we could start with that one, if that's okay.
Totally fine. Let's grab it.
Okay, awesome. So the question was in the Q&A, for those in EECS program, what type of job opportunities are you thinking of seeking after completion, and what type of opportunities are currently out there? So I can start with, I guess, me, and then Josephine can answer, I'm guessing. So I'm the EECS program. I specifically came in with working previously in the semiconductor industry and have been an electrical engineer in my previous life. Still kind of am. It never goes away. For what type of job opportunities, I personally am actually using partially the LGO program to figure that out. And I think you kind of have 2 or 3 different types of people in the program. Some that are like having it as a way to figure themselves out, and some that are like kind of know what they want and just kind of get in there. What's really cool is we get introduced to a lot of different things. And so careers that I never even expected to like before actually end up liking now and considering. I'm personally still leaning more towards the product side. So I think a technical management role is kind of what I'm trying to go for. So something either in product development or a technological strategy would be kind of what I'm trying to go for, I think. But yeah, at least that's personal.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I'm coming from a software background rather than the hardware side, but also similarly hoping to stay in product and maybe even some risk management. But honestly, you get introduced to so many different fields and industries that it's a really great place to kind of figure out where you want to take your skills next.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Emma, I have one more. I don't mean to jump in. Actually, I have a couple. There's a lot of talk about the technical recommendations about the application, which is relevant because we're talking about engineering. We're talking about the engineering department. So the technical recs. And I'd love for the students actually to talk about their process in getting technical recs. But before, specifically, the questions were, do you recommend technical rec letters that are always from professors, or can it be, for example, a client of my current startup that is that is software related? Another question was, what's the best substitute for the technical letter of rec if you come from a non-technical job like consulting and you don't have strong enough connections from your undergrad institution? So students, can you talk about the technical recommendation, how you approach that, who you spoke to? You don't need to give names, obviously, but just who they are in your life and your process about the technical letters of rec?
I'll go first because I have to go right after this. So
Thank
I will
you.
just answer it. Sorry for that.
No, that's
Um,
good.
so I had the free recommendation letters, like I think this is still what you're recommending, quite strongly. And for me, I kind of separated it in three ways. One was one of my colleagues that I worked with almost every day. He's more senior, so he had I think a good bigger picture of where I was coming from and where I was going, and he could really speak to I think my engineering abilities, like really like at work, what I'm doing, and really he kind of emphasized that in his letter, at least what he told me. Then I had my second recommendation, which was my mentor at the company, which in my case was a VP in one of the like of the units of like one of the technological units of my company, and she really could speak to my I think my leadership skills. So I kind of got added that aspect and kind of like where she thinks I can grow. So I would like to kind of say kind of like my potential person, like what does she see me as and where does she go? And she was really a big picture person, so that helped me. And then the last one was PhD that I did undergrad research with. So she was a kind of my closest, my co-author for my paper on undergrad, and really someone that kind of taught me what I was doing for research. And so she kind of brought in that academic aspect to it, but also how do I approach research and really how do I do that? Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna go now. It was really nice to meet all of you. Please feel free. I know maybe you will share my email or not, Emma. I will drop it in the chat. I guess there's no chat. Um, just Emma will share my email. Feel free to ask me any questions and reach out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Marie. Joe, do you have to go too? I think you have to go too.
I can take a couple more minutes.
Okay, can you talk about your technical recs, how you kind of approached that and got that done?
Yeah, for sure. So I submitted two technical letters of recommendation, one of which was from an old professor of mine from like a software engineering class that I took in undergrad, who also did some advising for me. So that was an academic professor. And then the other technical letter was from a senior member of organization I had previously worked at. So I had one from my job and then one from academics on my end. And I think one of those focused a lot more on me, my like pure like raw technical implementation, like the academic one more how I did in class, stuff like that. And then the one from a senior colleague was centered more around how I use that to lead and help my team members, etc.
So Dominic, let me just chime in for a quick second.
Please.
The technical letter is used by the engineering departments to assess how you're going to be able to perform in both the classes, because the technical demands of classwork is fairly heavy in the engineering disciplines, as well as conduct research during your internship and have that research, because it's not just a summer internship where you do a project. So you're writing a thesis. So if you don't have any technical assessment, the only thing is your test scores, and that doesn't give a full picture. So you really want to try and paint a full picture. And I think both Maureen and Joe described kind of how they fleshed out. So that's why we're asking for the technical recs. Otherwise, the engineering departments have a hard time assessing whether you will, because we want people to succeed and thrive at MIT, not struggle. And that's where we're trying to do with the application.
Thanks, Ted. Lots of questions also about, sorry, Emma, I'm going through all the questions. Lots of questions about work experience. Lack of how much should we have? So let's quickly talk about work experience. I think Emma mentioned our average work experience for all of our students is about 5 years experience. we do look for experience. We want that classroom to be, we want to learn from you. You know, we want the classroom to be interactive. So work experience is something that we do look for. I would say the scope is usually around 2 to 8 years, but average is 5. We do not have any students with less than 2. We'll get 1 or 2 with 2 years, but it's very rare. So experience is important. Again, leaning towards 5 is the average, and we don't have any that come right out of undergrad. So of all the questions that are coming in, yeah, we want to look for some experience, some relevant, good experience that you can bring to class, and we can talk about. Joe, go ahead.
I sadly have to head out, but thank you so much. And everyone, feel free to reach out if there's any questions you have as well.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we have a few more minutes left. We have about 15 minutes. Is that right, Emma?
Yes.
I'm going to go
Do you mind
rapid fire because we have a
Do you
lot of
mind if I
questions.
do one?
Yeah, please go for
This
it.
one's not actually technically in the Q&A, but I'd love to hear Ahad's point of view. Ahad, are you there? Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, Emma, I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Could you explain why you chose your engineering department and
Yes,
like
of
what
course.
you hope to get out of it?
Yes, of course. I get that question quite a lot because there's this perception, especially outside of the US, that civil engineering in particular is just a structural engineering. It's regarding making buildings and bridges and other things. So one of the things that I often get as a question is that just to explain some context, I come off with 8.5 years of experience working in the supply chain division of Procter and Gamble. So having worked in supply chain and my undergrad was in mechanical engineering, so it naturally does not fit in very well with my career path if someone just hears out civil and thinks of it as making buildings or bridges. So MIT in particular has a very big systems approach to civil and environmental engineering, which means all of the research areas that Emma mentioned, particularly supply chains, resilient networks, as well as cyber physical systems, if that makes sense to you, the integration between software, including AI and all the buzzwords that you can talk about, and how they integrate into the society on the whole, how we can use them to build cooler technology, and then sustainability, which has been one of the things which has led to some very great outcomes for the society in general. In particular, we've had some startups as well. There is one that's making quite a lot of rounds on social media. If you've seen Active Surfaces, they're working on making flexible solar panels that are expected to revolutionize the way that solar technology works. So if you look at the broader spectrum of what is possible using CEE, to me, this field attracted me a lot because just the very nature of how many broad areas I could touch upon. So sustainability to begin with, how does that flow into supply chains? And particularly at the time that I was applying into the program, which was late 2021, I ended up deferring a couple of years. So when I was applying back then, that was right at the end of COVID. And one of the reasons that I was passionate about applying was that the entire world was exposed in terms of how weak the supply chain systems were. Was the Suez Canal blockage thing that happened in the Middle East. There was the global microchip shortage. So I really wanted to make my mark in terms of the whole world was going to recalibrate in terms of how we see supply chains, how we see safety stocks and all that. And I wanted to make my mark on that, coming right out of the LGO, getting to design the new standard for supply chains for the companies that I'm going to be working with. So this was my primary motivation behind applying to the program. But one thing that you will discover once you're in is that there's enough flexibility being able to take cross-registered courses, joint courses between other departments. Someone mentioned in the Q&A that how can I, as a mechanical engineering major, make an impact in supply chains? So there's enough of an overlap. May it be through your Sloan/MBA journey, which is not the focus of this discussion. May it be through your engineering electives. May it be through your even LGO core. So we have an operations management course. And some of the best discussions I've had so far regarding supply chain management have been with colleagues in my LGO journey who who do not have supply chain or CEE as their major. So these are just some of the elements. I hope, Emma, I've described it well enough.
Thanks,
That was
Ahad.
amazing. Thank you.
Ted, I have a EECS. Oh, actually, you typed and answered it already. Sorry about the bridge.
Yeah, at MIT, ECS is a combined department. You can either have, and we had two students here, one came from CS and one came from EE. MIT has always had a combined department and it's interdisciplinary, but you don't have to have both to be admitted. It's just, where do you want to focus?
I have another question, a couple of questions about entrepreneurial route. What percentage of students in the cohort take the entrepreneurial route and start a company by the end of the program? So admittedly, not many. We're not truly optimized to start a venture right after graduation. We're optimized to be in industry, to kind of roll up your sleeves and get in there. Now, I will say MIT as a whole have tons of resources, entrepreneurial resources here on campus with Sloan, with MIT. So there's a lot of resources that you can take advantage of while you're a student. And we do see a lot of LGO alum eventually start their own businesses down the road after years of experience after LGO. But right out of the gate, no, we're not optimized to start a company right. We're really more optimized for in-industry work.
We will have one or two that do that, but I think it's an exception rather than a rule.
Emma, I see you want to answer the one live about quotas. So go ahead. You can take that one. I'm trying to organize all the other ones.
No, you're good. So there are not quotas for each of the different disciplines. It does fluctuate each year how many we do accept and how many do come to LGO, but there is typically some numbers that are like pretty in average per year. You can see that on our website. So you can see a whole class profile on our website that you can see how many students are in each department this year and their backgrounds.
Ted, I have one for you. Being our internship and thesis expert, how do you choose your thesis topic? Is it related to your internship, or can it be another topic of your choosing?
It is related to your internship. Your internship is the content about which you write your thesis. And depending on the department, you will have your thesis advisor assigned after your internship. With CEE and Aeroastro, the advisors are assigned at time of admissions. So though your engineering advisor is set, each student has two advisors, one from Sloan and one from engineering. So that is how you do your thesis research.
Thanks, Ted. Question about if you take the GRE after the application deadline on November 6th. So technically you can submit it after, but we start the review process pretty quickly. So you may get reviewed without your GRE score. So I would definitely recommend submitting everything by November 6th. Next up, what is the recommended GMAT? Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. What do you have the stats in front of you, Emma? I think the average GMAT is 730. I don't know off the top of my head. Emma's going to look that up really quick.
For GMAT, the average GMAT this year was 728, but it does range from around 700 to 780.
Ted, I have another question for you. Is it recommended that you have one specific lab, professor, and or research project within the chosen department for the statement of purpose? Or should you make it more of a general area of interest within the engineering department?
I would say for Aeroastro and civil, focusing on which faculty and research areas you would want to do that research. Within ECS and mechanical engineering, those are more general, as well as chemical engineering. So it depends on the department you're applying to, but I would research the department and understand what the various faculty and research areas are. Faculty will not respond to applicants. There are tens of thousands of people applying to MIT. So that's a question we get often is, what faculty can I talk to? They will talk to you after your students, but they just don't have the bandwidth to address all questions.
And to continue with that, and you basically just answered this, but just to put it out there, if research is within the partner companies and the advisor is assigned during admission, how do we navigate ensuring we work with a specific professor whose research seems to align, and how much work with them would we get? In a sense, how does the advising look?
So we have a academics research team. So another advisor you will have is on my team, who either Darby Herring or Scott Kennedy, who is your academics, your LGO staff research advisor. But we connect with the faculty and we work with the companies and the supervisors to craft your project after it is matched to gain that alignment. So you will not be working on research that is in the faculty's research lab, but the faculty will have expertise that he will bring to the project that is done at the company.
Thanks, Ted. If a previous experience in a field such as AR or Astro is a plus but not mandatory, it's actually required. You can't have none. How well do people do trying to use the program as a career switch? And are there any ways to make up for that lack of experience in applications? Ted, Emma, jump in. Ahad, jump in. So my thought here is, like we mentioned before with experience. So experience is important. We want to make sure the classroom is interactive. We want you to take that experience to class. So having a lack of experience, I think really the only way to make up for that lack of experience is to get experience. Thoughts, Ted, Emma?
So I think the question, it's anonymous, so whoever anonymous at 1242 is, if you are in biotech and you want to go into AeroAstro and you have no relevant work experience, you have no relevant class experience, it's not a place to go learn this. This is at a graduate level, so you have to have the background to do that. So LGO is a way you can pivot your career after doing it, but it's not a place to learn a new discipline. You have to have undergraduate level preparation to be able to do graduate level classes.
Thanks, Ted. So we have like 1 more or 2 more minutes left. I want to do quick lightning round. And as Emma just mentioned in the chat, if any of these questions don't get answered, please email us at lgo@mit.edu. These have been really great questions. So real quick, can assistantship be considered as work experience? It depends.
What do you mean by assistantship?
Yeah, email us at lgo@mit.edu. And if you have your resume, whoever, the other anonymous at 1247, whoever that is, email us with your resume, highlight what you're talking about. It really depends. It really depends. I should leave it there.
And
go ahead,
just a quick one. We have a final capstone event called Knowledge Review, which is a mini thesis defense. So students do not defend it exactly the same way PhD students do, but there is knowledge sharing and you present your thesis work the final spring of your time here.
One last question real quick, Ahad, while you're here. Can you comment on how the interview looked? So what was the interview like?
He has no idea. He has an interview. Oh, what the interview to get in?
Oh, I'm assuming the interview, admissions interview.
Yeah, the admissions interview. So the admissions interview experience for me was, first of all, very amicable. It was a pretty friendly environment. The interviewer put me at a lot of comfort. And it revolved around two of the technical questions which were sent out. Like once you're invited for an interview, I'm not sure if the process is the same, Dominic and Emma, but I was asked to provide 2 case studies where I use data-based decision making. And once you post that pre-interview, the interviewer comes having read those cases, and they have a couple of questions. Some of those are behavioral and some of those are from within the database decision-making case studies that you provided. In the end, I really enjoyed the interview. It was on a very amicable note, and it was generally a very pleasant experience. It was not stressful at all.
Thanks, Ahad. We're over time. And sorry, Emma, I'm totally taking over right now. My fault. If everyone has any questions that we didn't get to, of the 11 that we didn't answer, please email us. We're so sorry. We need to be respectful of everybody's time. But email us, lgo@mit.edu, and we will answer you.
Thank you all for coming. We hope to see you at another event very soon.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ahad. Thank you so much, everybody.
Have a good rest of your Thursday or Friday if you're somewhere else.
Take care. Bye-bye.